Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video, I'll be going through the Geelong versus Freo game. It's probably going to be a very quick recap, just looking at the scores here. Wasn't able to watch the game, but just the highest for the game was a 96. It's gonna on the thumbnail, it's gonna be an 85 in there. That's how bad this was, and there was nothing from Freo. Freo ended up scoring over 1,000 points, with their highest being Strom at 74. It's just looking at these scores, it's so terrible, to be honest. But anyway, before we get into the video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into this recap. So yeah, lucky that I wasn't able to watch this game. I knew that you pretty much knew that Geelong were going to win this game, but just looking at the scores, no ton, and what's that, 480s and 370s. This is poor. Like, this, for fantasy perspective, this is really, I guess, poor, and just owns back to that point that I was making in the previous recap of the St Kilda GWS game, that are we really too, I guess, hopeful for really high scores, those 120s, 130s, 140s from those women's, that we really need to get back to the point that that with the men's game, what were the highest scorers? 120 average for the men's. If we discount that by what's the women's game? It's 17 divided by 20, so 85%. Take I think it was 118 divided by 0.85. Times by 0.85. And you get 100.3. So the highest scorers should be 100.3. If we actually, I'm actually going to do that for a second, is actually go into the fantasy app and look at the breakdown for like defenders, etc. If we look at the actual defenders, if we go into, I don't care about that. I just want to see defenders. Defenders here, and we look at their averages for actual defenders, and you see in the men's game it was 104. So if we discount 104, there was like three guys that went over 100. So if we look at 100 on the dot, so that would be 85. So the women's are scoring significantly less, and that's because they have no time on ground. Their games are actually around about 66% of the time. And I think that's what people are forgetting, is that it says that they're playing 17 minutes, but that's a rolling clock. So a rolling clock to a certain degree. So that actually means that they're playing roughly about 66% time on game time. And if we look at that 104, times that by 7, we'll say 0.7, that's a 73. That is very in line with what the women are doing and the defenders right now. And then the midfielders is out of whack a little bit. If we look at the forward line, I'm just trying to make a comparison here. The ruck line was 118 that Tim English did, but aside from those two big rucks, it was 102. And then if we look at the women's averages for the ruck line, and you'll see something very similar here. We got two girls here that are 88. So if we go 118 times 0.67 or whatever, we'll do 0.7. 118 times 0.7, 82.6 for Tim English's. Tim English equals Strom in the women's, basically nailed on. If you look at their time, if you look at their percentages, Moffat's a little bit above that, but still and then you have a gap here, and then Edmonds at 0.77. So if we look at the I think it's Nankervis at 102 for Nankervis, his average, you'll see that was that's roughly that's roughly around here range. So just looking at these splits here, and you can see that I think we're overestimating the ability of the women's to score highly on average. And I think that's why, especially me, I'm disappointed with when a girl goes 70, when in reality that's 100 in the men's game. If you actually look at the splits for time on ground, etc. And then in the women's, the forward line, the forward line is just, if we actually look at forwards in itself, the actual forwards, I'm trying to find here, an actual forward, Dusty Martin, 90. The next actual forward for the women's is, I think, Rose, a winger. Goldsworthy, I guess, is a is a forward to a certain extent. Hooker's a winger. Barr, I think, is a forward. Paxman isn't. Single's a midfielder. Malloy's a midfielder. Skepper, I believe, is a midfielder. DePoy's a forward at 73. So if we look at that 90 and times it by 0.7, that's a 63. If we look down here, that's roughly around that area. And we look, Berry, midfielder. Stratton, midfielder. Maloney, part-time mid. Brennan is a forward at 68. That's fairly decent output. So just look at Kelly's a winger. Ty's a forward at 72. Same with Davidson, a forward at 72. So these guys are actually doing really well, punching above their weight as a actual forward to do that. But if we actually look at the and then we compare also to the forwards that are midfielders in both the men's and women's. You have Gordon at 112, Taranto 112, Rosie 105. Dunkley 104, and we look at that, that's very, very similar to these. Well, actually, the women's are punching above their weight here. Look at that. A 112 from Gordon would be, what, an 80 or so? So Gordon would be sitting around here if we had similar game time. So that's just saying that I think a lot of there's this range of like 3 or 4 in the midfields and forwards. Look at Marinoff, Gardner, Rowbottom, Riddell, and Hatchard. Those, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we take away 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we add probably Moffat to that as well, 10. So there's roughly 10 players that are punching so far above the men's averages that I think it's distorted our view on what actually is a decent score. And I think it makes these games like this look really bad for scoring. But if we actually look at it, PRESPAKIS doing a 96. If we discount that by the factor of 0.7, you'll see how ridiculous of a game it is. Divide by 0.7. It's a 137 or so in the men's. But it looks terrible in the women's. And I guess that also brings up the point is, do we need to stop actually comparing it to the men's and try and find a way to sort of separate the products in itself so that women are on its own, and then and I guess that's going to come with time. I guess it will, because you need to find a way to, at least for me at least, I think I need to find a way to compare it to find a baseline, and then also slowly disassociate the two games because the scoring is different. Or at least the scoring arcs are different. So, at least, like PRESPAKIS and other girls that are doing 90 is actually a decent result, but also there are girls that are going to go bigger. And there is sort of this gap involved, whereas the men don't really see a gap as much between the top tier and the lower tiers. I guess it's just, this is a wild goose chase of a video where I just go on a massive tangent about scoring. But yeah, PRESPAKIS 96, McDonald 94, Emerson 85. Did I put Emerson in the video for the women's trade targets? I might have actually done that, and I just want to see 849. Or did I go with Emerson? Did I think, oh, she's too top tier to actually go for her? But yeah, she's done really well, especially in the last 3 here. Just looking here, 71 average, but that's because she's at the 60. So yeah, she actually could be a replacement for Heads if I can find the cash. Yeah, that might actually be the play next week, is to upgrade Heads to Emerson. And I'm probably butchering that name, but I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Karras might go to Emerson with the Heads, and also I could try and find a way to get McDonald to someone else, as she's just not playing, and there's no point having that, to be honest. Or try and get Huntington to another forward, as there are other forwards that have sort of a different role, and just look at that. But yeah, so going through that, Nina Morrison with an 82, she's going to drop in price. If we look at Morrison with that, she went 90s down 97k with a 59. I reckon she's going to go down another 100 or so k. So there is, and I know Single will drop dramatically. Single will probably drop with another 64, Single, and a 65 after that. Single's probably going to drop, I'd say, 35k, 40k. So there's going to be a 160k gap, I think, between Morrison and Single. Can I make that up with Caris and Huntington. Can I make that gap up? We'll have to wait and see, but I think 50, so that would probably put Caris needing a good 50k upgrade, I think, to make that gap, but that's all dependent on singles drop. But that would be, I think, a good, either Emerson or Morrison will be my target, I think, if I can get it done. As I don't think Brown will get above Huntington, but that could be the case that Brown actually gets above Huntington in value. But yeah, other than that, nothing much more. And of course, Hoare decides when I get rid of her, decides to have her best game of 60, and she's now going to be over 500k. So that makes sense, doesn't it? But yeah, other than that, nothing much here. Then we move over to the Freo girls, and you see here Strom 74 did all right. Stan at 72, she's doing well in her role. So she could be an option in the back line. Ty, Runnels, O'Driscoll dropping back to a 62 after that, 104 last week? 100, or was it 109? I think it was. O'Driscoll here. She dropped a high over 109, yeah. So it was a 109. So she's dropped back to normal. So that was just a outlier of a game, I guess you could say, in that last game. Lally, Varia, Miller 59. Her scoring is so wild that it's kind of ridiculous. And I just want to see fantasy by score. And yeah, you can see Strom dominated the last quarter. Hoare, they didn't do much in the first half and then dominated the second half scoring wise. No one else here really, as you can see, just because of the outputs of the game, did anything noticeable. But it was just sort of that no one had that 10 or 20 point game. There was 25, 26 is your lowest, so you see here. And there's a lot of 40s and 50s, which sort of does nothing for fantasy's sake, because you need those 70, 80s, 90s, as we were talking about, higher scores, those higher end scores to keep up with the big scorers, and there wasn't any rookies that really did outstanding. But anyway, that pretty much is the video. Probably a very scrappy recap, but just trying to go through and figure out why we have these preconceptions, I guess, about the fantasy scoring in the women's game, and why we can get better at it, I guess. But anyway, that is the video, and I'll see you guys in the next recap tomorrow, which will be the Sydney versus Hawthorn game, which I guess was an upset by the way the tipping went. But anyway, we'll get into that game tomorrow. Bye, guys.